And so, the senator from California is here introducing Kamala Harris!
Hi, everybody. Oh, thank you, MoveOn. Thank you, all these leaders, all these leaders. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, the clock is ticking. I got 5 minutes to give you my idea. I got a lot of ideas, but I'm going to share one of them with you, and it's about equal pay. Okay, so here's the thing. 1963, what happened? Many things. Equal Pay Act was passed. So that said, hey, look, women aren't paid equally as men for the same amount of work. So we need to obviously have a law about it because otherwise we can't get people to do the right thing. 1963 is passed. Fast forward to the year of our Lord, 2019. Women are paid 80 cents on the dollar to men. Black women, 61 cents. Native American women, 58 cents. Latinas, 53 cents. I like the cap that you're wearing. Enough, exclamation point. Right? Enough. Because it's not a debatable point. It's not a debatable point. It has been the case for decades that women are paid less than men for the same work. So that's off the table for discussion. Is it an issue? The issue is what are we going to do about it? Because most importantly, the goal is not just what are you going to say about it, how are you going to get to the point that women are paid equally as men, right? So, okay, so we had some great advancement. President Obama, first thing he signed, Lilly Ledbetter Act. It was incredible. It was important. Lilly Ledbetter, incredible woman. She's still around fighting. And so we got it so that women could actually litigate the case. They could sue. Didn't have to worry about a statute of limitations. Okay, so here's what I'm proposing. Big idea. So here's how it works out. So let's say the woman is working. You know, maybe she's got the guy who sits next to her if it's an open space. Maybe he's in the cubicle next to her. And they, you know, they're doing the same work. And then maybe they meet at the food truck, or on the elevator, or, you know, old school at the water cooler, right? And they're talking about, I don't know, what they got the kids for their birthday. And she's like, you got your kids some really serious stuff. My kids didn't get that. I wonder what's going on here. I wonder if we're paid the same amount. And then the other things start happening. You know, he rolls up in some car, and it's kind of, you know, out of her pay grade. She's like, what's going on here? So she goes to the supervisor. I'd like to know if John and I are getting paid the same amount. The supervisor says, I can't tell you about salaries. So then she goes to EOC, and they say, well, you know, give us some more information. Do you have anything else, right? So that means she's got to, on her own, start investigating. And then maybe if she gets enough, she can take a complaint, and then maybe she even has to take it to court to sue on the issue, sue the employer, which means she's got to come out of her own pocket for a lawyer. This is a working woman who's got a job. She may have kids. She may be a single mother. And we're putting the burden on her to make sure the employer is doing what, by law, they're required to do. So here's my big idea. Shift the burden. Okay, right? So what I am requiring, and will require when elected President of the United States, is that the burden will shift to the employer to prove that they are paying women the same amount as men for the same work. And this is then about transparency. I'm going to require that they post on their website what they're paying people for equal work. Then, because I'm all into also enforcement, so I am also prepared, as part of my initiative and my big idea, to say to those corporations, until you are paying women equally for the work they are performing, for every 1% differential between what the woman is making versus what the man is making. So let's say there's a 1% differential. No, let's go further because it's more accurate. Let's say there's a 5 to 10 to 20% differential. Well, for every 1% differential, you have to pay a fine of 1% out of your profits from the year before. So 5% differential, you got to pay 5% as a fine of what your profits were the year before. And where is that money going to go? Well, you know, we've been talking a lot about the need for family leave, but what we really need is paid family leave. That money is going to go into a fund for paid family leave so that those women also, who invariably are the ones who have to leave work to take care of a sick child or an aging parent, can also get paid while they are doing that important work. So that's my big idea.
Woo! Experience this in your career?
It is personal for me. It is personal for me. Look, I mean, I am obviously a woman of color, as you point out. My mother was also a woman of color. And, you know, aunties and relatives, all women of color. And it is not a new issue for me at all. And the reality of it is that when we look at what has happened in our country, we know that the battle for economic justice is a real battle. It is a civil rights battle. It is a battle about equality and fairness, and on the issue of pay equity as it relates to women of color. This is, I mean, look, black women, 61 cents on the dollar. Native American women, 58. Latinas, 53 cents on the dollar. Over the course of a lifetime, that results in potentially millions of dollars of lost wages for the same amount of work. And when we talk about the fact of historical bias and racism as it relates to not only treatment and in the workplace in terms of interactions, but the inequity in terms of treatment on the paycheck, it's very real. This isn't one of the other reasons that I'm focused on this issue, and another entry point is on the issue of teacher pay. So, can I have another big idea? So my other big idea is that teachers are paid on average 11% less than similarly educated professionals. In our country, 94% of teachers in public schools come out of their own pocket to help pay for school supplies. I'm meeting teachers who are working 2 and 3 jobs to help pay the bills. And, you know, it's clearly, one, we know that classically and historically and currently, teaching has been a job for women. It has been a woman's job. 70% of the teachers currently in public schools are women. And so when we look at the pay equity issue, let's understand that there is clearly a connection between the fact that this is a profession that has been performed by women and they are paid less than similarly educated professionals. So what I am proposing is what would, in the history of our country, be the first federal investment in closing the teacher pay gap, which is approximately $13,500 a year. $13,500 a year in most places is a year's worth of mortgage payments. $13,500 a year is a year's worth of grocery bill. That $13,500 a year is putting a significant dent in student loan debt, which is one of the biggest barriers to our students coming out of school and being able to enter this profession they may love. And let's put the context of it not only in terms of gender, but also race. Do you know that if a black child has a black teacher before the end of 3rd grade, they are 13% more likely to go to college? If a black child has had 2 black teachers by that time, you can double the number in terms of the likelihood that they will go to college. But we also know black students graduating college have greater debt than other students. So these are all correlated, these issues. Because if you combine the student loan debt with the low salary, how are we going to have black teachers, as a specific example, who want to teach, who want to engage and open up a child's mind to the wonders of science or engineering or math or art or music? How are they going to be able to afford to come out of school and do that? So all of these issues are connected.
Next question, Senator.
on implementation of your first big idea on the gender pay gap, not everyone works for a corporation.
Yes.
And a big... Hey, hey,
Whoa.
hey,
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 hey, hey, hey, hey, hey.
no,
Hey,
no.
I'm just
Oh, hi.
constituents.
Whoa.
We're just outside
Minute,
this
sir.
building protesting just a few minutes ago, asking for your attention to a much bigger idea than...
Thank you so much, sir,
Hey.
for your big idea. But we want to make sure that we are able to get through this. Okay, it's okay, folks. It's okay. People have their own big ideas. They have their own big ideas.
Yeah.
But we also want to make
It's
sure
okay,
that we are
guys.
being respectful to our folks that have come here to speak to us.
You just
So,
got to be
here's
respectful
what we're
to all
gonna
the
do.
folks that are coming out here.
Yeah, we want that respect.
Kamala!
You okay, Mama? You're good.
I'm good.
We need a mic
We need
for
a
her.
microphone.
We need a mic.
I'm good. It's all good.
All right.
Don't worry.
I'm so sorry about
no,
that.
All right.
Give it up. Give it up for your senator from California.
Woo! You're good. Good.
You had a question, and I want to answer
We do
it.
have a question.
Yes.
Big ideas for him.
Yes, yes. Okay, we're going to actually go to a MoveOn member question, which is from Ryan from South Carolina, who asks, what steps would you take to gain and protect the rights and lives of all LGBTQ people? It's Pride Month here in San Francisco. It's really important with conversion therapy gaining momentum in evangelical churches and that conversation taking on more of a national conversation and the continuing rise of the murders of the transgender community, and given vocal critics of the Equality Act, what would you do to protect current and future generations of LGBTQ Americans across the nation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And first of all, I'm acutely aware of it. Even when I was Attorney General of California for 2 terms, we published the hate crime statistics every year. And the level of hate that has resulted in acts of violence and sometimes lethal in proportion is not only unacceptable, but is something that we all need to be aware of in understanding that these forms of hate are very real.
Yes.
And we need to speak truth about it. And we need to understand that over the last couple of years, that hate has received new fuel that has been fanned by this administration.
Yes.
And so here's what I say. Whenever and wherever that hate displays itself, it is incumbent on all of us to stand up and speak out, and it is incumbent on all of us that whomever is the target of that hate, we must never make that person fight alone. And now I will talk about the specific issue of, in particular, what's happening with our transgender community. Years ago, when I was elected DA of San Francisco in 2003, and shortly after, we saw a series of homicides against members of the transgender community nationally. You'll remember some of them. And then there were the cases like Matthew Shepard and Gwen Rahu. And there was this thing happening in courtrooms where the killer would offer a defense. They called it the gay panic defense. Ooh. Remember that? And they would suggest to a jury that their state of mind was that basically they weren't composed at that moment. It wasn't intentional, that they panicked when they realized that the person they were with was transgender. Bogus. 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 So, back when I was DA of San Francisco, knowing this was happening, and also knowing that with pride, I say, we have some of the, I think, nationally and internationally best known experts and advocates and leaders in the transgender community, I decided to create a training for prosecutors around the country to come to San Francisco. I hosted it at my alma mater at Hastings College of the Law, up the street, and brought in all these prosecutors, DAs from around the country, and we created a whole curriculum to train them on how to defeat this gay panic defense. And we brought in leaders from the transgender community to talk about what their life experience was like, to talk about what had been happening, to tell stories that many of these prosecutors never heard, but to make sure that we would understand that when any prosecutor says that they represent the people, that means they represent all people, and that all people should be treated with dignity and respect, and these issues should be known. Moving forward, I would say that we have to, transgender men in the military, we have to fight against that. The fact that these men and women have sacrificed already, and others are prepared to sacrifice their life in defense of our country, and that anyone would shut the door on them is unconscionable and unpatriotic as far as I'm concerned. And then we can go on and on about, I put this issue as so many issues that deal with hate in the context also of this. The President of the United States has so many immense powers that include the power that comes with this thing. And when this thing then is in her hands, it must be used in a way that is about elevating public discourse, and used in a way that is about educating the public about things they might otherwise not know. And it must be used in a way that is not about beating people down, but about lifting people up.
All right. So we've got about 3 more minutes left. I wanted to ask you about Medicare for All, as a supporter of Medicare for All, and many MoveOn members are supporters of Medicare for All. What would you say to someone that's skeptical of it?
Yeah, so, okay, and there are some.
Yeah.
First of all, I think the greatest source of concern and fear is, will I lose my doctor? Like, if we sift through the concerns, I don't hear many people, I'm traveling the country, I don't hear many people saying, I want to keep my insurance company. Right?
So true.
Ain't nobody trying to fight for their insurance company.
Yeah.
People know their insurance company is the source of jacking up their premiums and their co-pays and their deductibles. So that's not what that's about, right?
Yeah.
And so the response that I offer is that you should know 91% of all doctors in our country are in Medicare right now. So the odds are very low that you would have to give up that doctor you like and you trust and that may have been the pediatrician for all of your children. You shouldn't assume that that's going to happen, because it's very likely you will keep your doctor. The other piece of it is to understand that it is the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies that have been jacking up prices constantly. And the story I like to tell, and many of you have probably read about it, it was in the New York Times, but it's a story, and it's a story that happens all over America, so I will just adapt from that story. But the general point being, in any place in America right now or this evening, there will be a parent whose child has an uncontrollable fever, who calls the doctor or 911 and says, what should I do? And they tell the parent, take that child to the emergency room. So then they drive to the hospital, and they're in the parking lot of the emergency room with a hand over that child's forehead, hoping that fever is going down, while staring at the front doors of that emergency room. Because, you see, that parent has insurance. But they know as soon as they walk through those sliding glass doors, they're looking at a $5,000 copay. They have insurance. So when we talk about Medicare for All, it's about taking that out of the equation. It's about putting everyone in the system. It is also, on the subject of the pharmaceutical companies, about saying this. It's like the reason that we support organized labor, because nobody should be made to fight alone, right? So we don't want to require any employee to have to fight for wages and benefits against the employer. That's why we say we're going to support collective bargaining, because there is strength in the collective, especially when it is against a very powerful entity or interest. So on the issue of Medicare for All and the pharmaceutical companies, listen, Their bottom line is profit, not public health. And they keep jacking up the prices. Do you know 1 in 4 diabetes patients in our country cannot afford their insulin? There is a syringe that, when applied, can save the life of someone who was OD'd from opioids. Do you know that syringe can cost up to $4,000? So with Medicare for All, everybody's in the same system, which means we can then collectively bargain against the pharmaceutical companies to bring the prices down. So these are all the reasons I support Medicare for All.
Thank you so much, Senator.
Thank you so much, Senator Harris.